Okay, so for Greek reading,
Hmm.
egeneto has
Hmm.
two meanings.
Yeah,
It's they came and was made.
yeah,
But how can I know what it means when I see it in another text?
yeah,
Because it doesn't have like a difference in punctuation or in the letters.
yeah. Well, they're the same word, okay? So it's not that there's going to be any difference in the words. Egeneto. So the question is, if egeneto, a word like this in Greek, has different possible meanings, how can we tell which meaning to use when we see it in a text? How can we know how to translate it? All right. And
Yes.
just think about English. It's very simple. This happens in English all the time. There are words in English that have lots of different meanings. How do we make that decision? We make it based on context, right? So it's good for us to translate one word at a time, but there are many places where we can't do that. We have to sort of get an idea of the whole passage first, and then
Okay.
use that passage to help us make decisions about how to translate individual words. And then we can test our translation by whether that makes the rest of the passage clear. So both of those things work together. We use words to translate and figure out the meanings of passages, but we also use our knowledge of what the passage says to go back and clarify the meanings and the translations of words. All right, so with a
Yes.
genital, we'll have a range. The way we think about words in translation is there's a range of possible translations for any word, really. All right?
Yeah.
And when we look at a word, we get into our minds what that range of meaning is, and then we move on to the next word, and we get an idea of what that range of meaning is, and then we start to see the relationship between the words in a passage, and then we start to make decisions about exactly how a word should be translated. Okay?
Okay.
So what you
That's
have to learn, yeah, what you have to learn is you have to learn and continue to build your knowledge of the range, the number of different meanings and translations that a word can have. And then when you see them in a text, you have to always remember what those options are. Okay?
okay.
I mean,
Just
normally in our Greek lessons, normally I tell you what the meaning is, right?
yes.
But where that would be useful is when you start to try to read something on your own with no help, to remember that range of meaning, and then start sort of skim through the passage,
Uh,
translate it as best you can, and then go back and start cleaning up to make the passage accurate. Okay, the
okay.
translation.
Yes. Choose the meaning that best suits with the passage.
That's right. So you know what the possible meanings are. And it doesn't see some people who don't really know the vocabulary, they'll get a general idea of the passage and then they'll say that they're translating the language but not literally. That goes too far. We're not doing that, because then you can start to allow your interpretation to just make up translations for words, and that we can't do that. We still have to translate every word, and we still have to keep our translation of the whole passage accountable to every single word.
Okay.
But we have to use context at the same time. We have to use the context to help us determine exactly what translation we should use for each word. Okay?
Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks for answering that question.
Yeah. And let me
Um.
let me say this on top of that. This
Yes.
because of that unclarity, right? There's a lack of clarity in translation. That's why when people say we don't need the church to interpret the Bible for us, we can just study the language ourselves. That's false, because we have to make decisions in interpretation. There's no such thing as translation without interpretations and decisions about how words should be translated. So translation comes down in many places to making an interpretation or a judgment about what the word can mean. And that's why the church alone has authority to make those decisions. And that's why the church doesn't like when people translate the Bible. And people will say, what's the matter? I'm just translating the Bible. No, it's not that simple. You see what I mean?
Yes, I
You're not
see.
just you're not just translating the Bible, you're interpreting what it means and then translating it, so it's got your interpretation built into the translation.